Beethoven's First Symphony is in many ways the beginning of something new. Obviously it's the first of 9 symphonies that would change the world of music. Also it's introducing new ideas for how to write a symphony, ideas that would later become very crucial to Beethoven's work. And also it's written around the year 1800, so it stands at the beginning of a century in which music would change enormously and where Beethoven obviously plays a very important role. Now we are in C major and there are 4 movements, so let's begin with the first. Now the symphony begins in a very unusual way. Usually symphonies at this time begin by establishing the tonic, establishing the tonality so that we know where we are. But this symphony does something else. It begins like this. What we have heard so far did not include the tonic chord. Instead, what we heard was a chain of dominants resolving into different chords. And the chords that they resolve into are in the first bar F major, and in the second bar A minor, and in the fourth bar G major. These 3 chords function as the subdominant and the relative minor and the dominant of our main key C major. So it's obviously some of the most fundamental chords of C major that we hear. C major is being indicated. We get an idea of C major, but we don't actually hear C major yet. This is very unusual to do for a symphony at this time. Usually music at this time begins by establishing what key we're in. And even though this symphony is a very classical symphony, it's very clearly structured and so on, this way of opening moves us a little bit away from the clarity of the classical era and a little bit closer to the era of Romanticism, which is to come some years later. So this is a small step in that direction. Now the tonic chord is actually only heard at bar 8 after the following phrase. That's how long time it takes before we finally arrive at the tonic. The tonic is played at bar 6 also, but in its first inversion, it's in the middle of a phrase, so we don't really land on it. The music only firmly lands on the tonic and establishes it at bar 8. This means that the music is searching and that it is moving forward, looking for its tonic, looking for its ideal, so to say. And this is an idea that later develops a lot with Beethoven and becomes what we sometimes call per aspera ad astra, which means through difficulty to the stars. So the idea is that you begin in a non-ideal place and then you move forward towards finding that ideal. This becomes very central for Beethoven in pieces such as the 5th and the 9th symphonies, and in those pieces it's very clearly experienced because they both begin in such a dark place and they end in this glorious light. But it's the same thing that happens here, though on a much smaller scale, because we begin without our ideal and then we move towards it. And it even happens at the very micro level, since the symphony begins with these dominant tonic resolutions. We begin with tension, which we then release. I think it's very interesting that a composer to whom the idea of moving towards a better place is so central, that he has his first symphony begin like this, begin with the tension and release in the wrong key, and only reaching the ideal later on. So symbolically, this opening of the first symphony represents Beethoven's work in general. After bar 8, the next time we get the tonic is only at bar 13. And this is where the fast section begins. So in the whole opening slow section, we only go to the tonic twice, and we only hear it twice. And the second time we reach it, we're already at the fast section. So the opening section is like 2 waves that harmonically move us forward. And the moment we land on the tonic the second time, the music already goes ahead in the fast section. Since the music is constructed like this, it brings the half step into focus from the very beginning. We hear these half steps. down at the same time inside the chords. And as we move on, we have even more half steps. And even more. So the half step is a very fundamental musical element here at the beginning. And as we move along, we'll see how it expands and how this idea of moving by going one step away becomes the founding musical element of the whole symphony.